All right, gang, welcome back to another Wake Up Humans with Dr. Drew Henderson. And we got a freaking awesome dude joining us this week, Dr. Matt Alvord. What's up, fellas?
Not much, man. Just another Tuesday. We're loving it up here in North Georgia.
Is it Tuesday or Tuesday?
Tuesday.
What's up, Matt? How are you, handsome?
Doing good, doing good. I'm just lucky to be alive, and I'm lucky to be alive with you guys.
Amen, my man. Beautiful
I couldn't think of
fireplace
a
you
better
got
Tuesday
behind
night
you.
what's that?
You should have a nice fire burning in that huge fireplace behind you, man.
I never use it. I wish I'd had gas there instead of fire. I mean, we cleaned it out 6 years ago, and it's never been lit after that.
I,
I think
I
that's
could
a lot of people.
I could teach you how to start a fire.
To
Get
start
two
fires, I
sticks,
just
rub them
want to clean up.
together.
Yeah, I can start
You know you're
fires. I walk into a room and say something, and I leave.
Yeah, we know you're good at starting fires, Albert. How many people have you pissed off in our profession through the years, Matt?
Well, it reminds me of that Sigafoos quote: "If you're not pissing somebody off, you're doing something wrong. You're not telling the truth." I'm not
And
trying to
that's what I
piss
love
people
about
off. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to piss people off. I'm trying to literally just go, here's the principle. And it's like if you yell asshole in a room, you know?
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. If there are no assholes in the room, you're not going to hear anything. You
Right.
know, if you yell mixer in a room, you're going to get all kinds of heat.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
and I
sensitive, very sensitive.
yeah. Well, I mean, I've changed my whole thing. I really adopted that thing where, you know, if you have the truth without love, you're a clanging cymbal. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Say that again. If you
So
have what?
if you don't have love, even though you're telling the truth, you're just a clanging cymbal.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what is that? 1 Corinthians 13, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you get
Nice.
the whole love litany before or after that. I forget what comes before or after that. But yeah, so I mean, I don't use the word mixer anymore. I just go, here's what chiropractic is. And then if people have a problem with it, that's not my problem.
How
Take it
come
up
you
with
Now,
the
don't
in
use the
the
principal.
word mixer? Why don't you use the word mixer anymore?
Well, the word mixer for me doesn't even work anyway, because what you don't get is you don't get people practicing principled chiropractic with ultrasound. That's what you don't get. That would be mixing. That would be mixing
Right.
oil and water, right? What we've got is oil and mud and crap and whatever else. You don't get people doing specific chiropractic care, okay, and then throwing in some ultrasound,
Yeah,
or some laser
Right.
treatments. I've never had a good adjustment from anybody who was doing anything else.
that's right.
Because their
That's right.
intention was probably off, right?
Well, I mean, you can spin 5 plates or 14 plates, but how good are you concentrating on one plate? Jack of all trades,
But it's
master of one.
like, we've gotten used to cohabitating and being nice to one another and let them do what they do, what we do. And then if we speak up against this stuff, I see shit all over social media popping up with all the shockwave, ultrasound, weight loss, everything like it's normal in chiropractic now. And then I'll comment on it and they're like, well, who are you to be the voice of chiropractic? I'm like, well, someone's got to say something. That's not chiropractic. But I
Yeah,
feel like
and
we've
what
just
makes it
gotten quiet. Go ahead,
yeah,
Drew.
and what makes it normal now are some of these people that used to be solid have sold out, and we're like, oh well, shit, this must be all right
Yeah.
because this solid person's doing this now. Well, I thought they were solid, but
Yeah,
now
they want to feel good
it
about
it
their
looks
compromise.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to feel good about their compromise, and that's fine. That's their thing. But the principle is one thing. I can't. If you define a lamp as a table, well, you've just destroyed the definition of a lamp and a table.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so people just want to do what they want to do, and that's fine. They want to make a buck. They want to do whatever they want to do it in our profession. I didn't define chiropractic. I like to think that I help refine it a little bit, you know, and
Yeah.
primarily for my own selfish reasons. I want to understand chiropractic better. So yeah.
But do you think you're trying to understand it purely for yourself or how you could deliver it to your patients and help educate them? Because I know you're a big thinker. You think that was part of it?
I don't know about you guys, but when I first got in practice, the worst feeling for me is not having an answer for somebody
Hmm.
and not being clear and authoritative. And that has to come from a clear understanding of your philosophy and why you're doing what you're doing. And you know, the whole fake it till you make it, that only goes so far. So I literally just wanted to create this foundation of pure understanding for myself and not being able to have an answer for everybody. Because one of the best answers you can have is, I don't know.
Right.
But literally what's interesting is understanding why you don't know. It's not because you throw up your hands and say, I don't know. It's because, let me give you some specific reasons why I don't know. And by the way, Rochester, Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic doesn't know either. And nobody can know. That's above everybody's pay grade. So if I tell somebody I don't know something, it just means it's above my pay grade. And wouldn't matter. I could study, for the rest of my life, I would know that answer. But this is why I don't know. But everything else, I wanted to understand. I wanted to tease apart all the principles and go, how does this thing work? And it had to make sense to me. So ultimately, when I got in front of anybody, I felt comfortable talking about it.
It's funny because will we ever really know how it works?
I don't think so.
I look at it like an equation.
It's too big.
Yeah. You can look at it like an equation, right? You could have 3 variables in an equation, right? And you can understand that equation. Like, how many of us know the equation E equals MC squared, right? We all know it. How many of us actually understand what that means? We claim to know, right? But there's a dynamic, there's a relationship there. So there's this beautiful kind of like yin yang thing with knowing exactly what an equation is, but the mystery and all the variability is the thing that we can't know, because you can plug in an infinite number of numbers into that equation and come up with completely different answers. We have this relationship between identifying an innate intelligence and identifying specific interference to it and delivering a specific adjustment. And that's an equation in a way. We don't have to know what's happening with that individual person inside and what happens when you have interference to that individual, and then how that unique walkout of restoration happens. Nobody knows that. And so, but we can now still understand this beautiful equation of intelligence, expression, interference, and then restoration. And to me, I always call that the periodic table of chiropractic. So in there is certainty, but yet being able to say on a certain level in a certain way, I don't know.
Right.
I have found that you have an innate intelligence in you. I have found the problem, the interference, as Sid would say, and the adjustment is going to be your answer. But I don't know the details. Right. And I don't have to know the details. My favorite thing to tell somebody when I adjust them is, I don't know what you need, but you just got it.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, Matt, one question. I know you got your diplomate, your PhD up at Palmer, right? Like your postdoctoral.
Actually, I got mine through Sherman, because ironically, Palmer dropped the ball on it and Sherman picked it up. Yeah, with Bill Deccan.
But now I know that we know the major premise is a universal intelligence is in all matter, continually given to it all of its properties and actions, thus maintaining it in existence. But I believe you said your thesis was on the minor premise. Is that right?
But the name of my thesis was the minor premise, and it's all about restoration. And I thought it was very peculiar how we have 33 principles. People love to say 33, 33, 33, but nowhere in it, and Stevenson emphasized it in his book, the aim of the chiropractor is restoration. So which one of those principles of the 33 is it? See? So that's why I did my paper, because it bothered me. I call it the culmination principle. Everything leads to that.
So would that be like
without an intelligence to have interference to restore it?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I just want you to expand on that for other people, because it's correct. We got to have that restoration, right?
But explain that. The aim of the chiropractor is restoration. Like, what does that mean?
So that's Stevenson. If I remember the specific line, he says the aim of the chiropractor, remember it, is restoration. And I think it's either italicized or it's boldface or something, but it's really emphasized. And yet, like I said, it's not in the 33 principles. So that didn't make sense to me. So you talk about, Steve, about how I have to make things make sense to me. Well, guess what? Nobody was even talking about that. And I'm like, why? Because if I literally just was being intellectually honest, and I got done with the 33 principles and I finished off at the law of demand and supply, where's the adjustment? I left them off at the subluxation on 31, right? And I talked about some bankers and clerks and demand and supply, and then I'm done. Where's the restoration?
Right.
You know, I'm not leaving the subluxation at the bank.
Well, it says the definition of restoration refers to the process of returning something to its original or improved condition after damage, decline, or disruption. It can apply to physical objects, environments, relationships, health, or even personal well-being.
Yeah, so the key with the restoration, part of the error our profession tries to do is restore the state of the matter instead of the state of the relationship. So they try to return the spot, they try to return the spine or the body into a physical condition or orientation like the perfect spine on a chart, right?
Yep.
Instead of the relationship of free of interference between intelligence and the matter that intelligence is supposed to control. So it's
what's the
really
difference? What's the difference between those two principles? So to explain to, like I say, a chiropractic student, those two principles right there are massive. Returning the spine or returning the relationship. Go there.
So the first one is all about the matter. The second one is all about the relationship with the intelligence to the matter. Yeah. So we have to, you can't have chiropractic, like Drew said, without that first principle, because you have to acknowledge an intelligence within that matter, first of all, and it's so paramount that intelligence or that matter literally wouldn't exist without the intelligence. Its existence literally depends on the intelligence within it. Yeah. So you can't just say, if as soon as you decide where that matter should go, you've decided to be the intelligence for that matter. And that's how a therapist thinks.
Repeat that.
So as soon as you decide where a bone is supposed to be, much less an orientation with other bones, you've decided to be judge and jury on that bone, even though you never earned the right because you never created that bone.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. You know, I watch this guy, I forget his name, he's got a podcast, and every time a person drops a bomb, he hits a button, it's like, so I just dropped the bomb. That was nice, Matthew.
But that's the stuff that I want to tease apart all the time. And what I love is just when I think I've figured it out, I'm like, oh shit. Didn't look at it that way before. And what's wild is I'll get somebody who kind of knows the philosophy say something, I'm like, oh shit, that was good. I wonder if they think it's good. You know, like you hear stuff from people, right? And you're like, wow, that was great. I wonder if other people think it's great.
But you know, I think, well, I really think that chiropractors need to start getting back into these conversations. You know, when I went to school, we stayed up to 2, 3 in the morning, just, you know, talking about, I got green books here, talking about the green books and Stevenson's and what is innate intelligence. And there's, you know, all this stuff, like we would just hammer it down and beat it down. A lot of that, from what I'm hearing from students, has gotten lost. Like they're not breaking down and jamming on the philosophy and the principles.
Yeah, and not philosophy as far as practice management. That who cares about that? It's like real chiropractic philosophy. Like we would get in arguments, like knockdown, drag outs. People have to be separated because Stevenson says this and you're saying some other bull crap over here.
Right.
You know, and I gave a student Stevenson's textbook. I saw him a few weeks ago. I'm like, hey man, you been reading that yet? Nah, I'm not reading that yet. Like, dude, like that's everything in there. That's the chiropractic textbook.
I got to study for boards.
Yeah. I ring gold.
Yeah, but you know what, that passion, like you said, people had to be separated. That passion ended up back in 2 different offices. And if it got oriented right, that meant growth, that meant reaching more people, whatever, right? Because passion's passion.
Right.
Right. I mean, you could use passion to kill somebody, but you could use passion to save somebody. And if you have to, you know, wouldn't it be great if people were being separated now? These young kids were getting separated for studying the philosophy in a bar somewhere.
Yeah.
Gosh.
It's going to be great chiropractors someday.
Well, that's the greatest practice builder, is to bring that passion into a practice and watch what happens. I mean, that's what the guys I know and girls that I know that are crushing it for 20 plus years, That's what we all did. We didn't really know how to run a practice in day one and day twos that all these kids know now by like sixth quarter. But that's not going to build a practice. It's your passion to save people's lives and serve them because of stuff like this. When you break it down enough and just realize how awesome what it is we have the ability to do to help people adapt, restore, and transform their life by whatever's inside of them, which we call the intelligence, right? By the adjustment, just setting them free.
Yep. And I
My
know for
biggest
me,
fear.
go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Drew.
I just know for me, I've not done any coaching, practice management, anything. Been to DE since 2000. I missed 2 of them because I didn't have any money to go to Miami or Canada when I was in school. But DE taught me how to love people. It taught me how to give out of my own abundance, love out of my own abundance, serve out of my own abundance. And when I got out of school, I just went right into practice. Little tiny town I'm still in. And I'm just like, well, shit, I'm open. I'm just ready to take care of people. There's no, um, upsell them on this, do that. It was just, I want to adjust people. I want to clear them out. And the first patient, I was just like, shit, they're paying me to do this, and from that day on, I just want to keep taking care of people. And that first couple I saw, the first day I was open, I still see them. I love that.
Yeah.
It's I didn't know what I was doing. I don't have a day one. I don't have a day 7. It's just like if a guy that drives the chicken gut truck, we have a chicken plant down the road, um, and there's tractor trailers that just haul guts away, right? He comes in, he's not going to listen to some of this. He's just like, listen, something's wrong. And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, you need adjusted, bro. And they usually don't
Yeah,
leave.
about 2% of my clients know about Harvey Lilly. Like
Yeah.
all this regurgitated stuff.
What?
Only about 2% of my clients even know. Yeah, jeez, walk right into that one. Like, yeah,
Hey, how
it's
many
just,
how many of your clients understand the word subluxation?
well, yeah, I got the best CA around. She hammers that home before I even walk in the room. But we're constant. We've got Steve, you've been to my office, but we got a bunch
Yeah.
of tables and people will have conversations. That open forum. I'm not sure, Drew. What do you got? Is it open for you?
Yeah, it's open.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, those best conversations that happen where, you've been working with somebody for 5 years and you hear you talk to a new one and they're like, geez, I've heard you say that numerous times before, but I didn't get it to you. I heard you tell somebody else that.
Right.
But it just, what's the code there? It's just doing it. It's constantly putting it out, time and repetition. Even if you're not talking to somebody directly, the odds are they're probably listening to you.
I got a patient. He's been coming in for about 15 years. He was on the table yesterday, and one of the interns was trying to talk to him about subluxation. He goes, "What is that?" Now he's heard the term, but he doesn't remember the words. And the intern goes, "He doesn't know what a subluxation is." I said, "Bro, why you been coming in for over 15 years?" He goes, "Because it changed my life and it helps me live better."
Yeah.
So then when the kid
Yeah.
explained, he goes, yeah, I know that. Like the Atlas, like he knew the big idea. He just couldn't remember the word. So then after he left, I said to the kid, I said, the problem is the only time he hears the word is when he comes in here. And if he's around the right people hearing me talk about it, right? He's not hearing other people in the media, social media, advertising, talking about Atlas subluxations, unless he falls on the right chiropractors, Instagram or Facebook. And I said, how amazing would it be if, as a profession, we got together and hammered home the education that subluxation was a household word, so they understood it. And he said, well, that makes perfect sense. But our profession has its head up its ass that they can't figure out which way we're going, whether it's weight loss, cold laser, or whatever BS, whatever the month is bringing, that we're not talking about subluxation. So people don't hear it unless they walk into the right office. But they don't hear the word regularly enough that it's part of their verbiage, I think.
Yeah. And I don't even think to be honest, I don't even think you have to use the word subluxation as long as you have that concept hammered home. If you
Yeah.
said in place your worst nightmare, okay, now you got my attention. What's that? Well, it's this invisible anchor chain that you're dragging around all day. You think your problem is Monday and it's a subluxation,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I had a guy probably 2 weeks ago. He come in. I'm like, hey, what's going on, Cliff? He's like, oh, listen, I got some pressure on my brain stalk. Just pressure on his brain
I
stalk.
love how you say that, Drew. I love how you say. I've heard you say that before. That's great.
And that's what I use half the time. Subluxation, they don't, they're like, what is that? Why are you using those big doctor words? You got
I
pressure
like to
up
say,
here in your brain stalk.
yeah, the problem isn't you, it's the absent you. And when you start showing up, things start going away.
Yep.
You know? So
Well, one of my favorite ones I've been using for several years now is, they'll come in and it's always the patient that hasn't been in a couple of weeks and they come in apologizing. I know I'm supposed to be here. Then they want to complain. And I'm just like, all right. And then when they finish their sentence, I said, you know what your problem is? What? I said, it's lack of chiropractic care.
yeah.
Yep.
But I even like to say, listen, we don't call people patients. And then that gets them talking. What the heck? Everybody's a patient, like not here.
Right.
This is why, for me, the more I can separate myself from everybody else and do it congruently through the philosophy, it's game on.
That's right.
I tell
No,
people you're
it's,
not going to get easy jokes anywhere else. You're not going to get these bad jokes anywhere else. So if you want your bad, I got new people that start and they get on the table and they're not used to, and again, to each their own for however they do things. But I always tell people everything in my office gets checked except for my jokes because I never want to know how they're doing. And so when I get people on the table and they've been to other chiropractors, they're used to having whatever done to them and just getting up and putting on their jacket. And I literally go, hey, where are you going? And there's 3 other people there, right? And I go, where are you going? And they go, if you want guesswork, you're going to have to go to another office. We have to confirm that, and they're not used to that, and I love to say, if it's not worth checking, it's not worth doing. And I'm not talking per visit. I'm talking per interaction. Every time you lay your hands on somebody, that's permission to interact with that majestic intelligence on the table. That requires a check every time. When you hit the ball on a golf course, it goes to a different place before you hit it. And the ball or the hole is orientated differently to that next shot. How do you know where to shoot? You're not going to just close your eyes and shoot in the same direction. This whole thing drives me nuts. You might as well be blindfolded.
What whole thing?
Because again, it's not worth checking. It's not worth doing. Where's the ball and specifically where it is to the hole now? And are you going to use a different club in a different direction? That's the next specific, force you're going to introduce into that body.
Right.
And again, teach your own, but that's the only thing that made sense to me.
Yeah, and if you use an analysis to find subluxation, before they get up, you should use that same analysis to make sure it's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you know it's not there?
Sense, Drew. Stop making sense, Drew.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are just basic concepts, right? Like use the same concept of interacting with your car to fix it. I mean, we use more logic with our car than we do with our bodies,
Yeah.
Why do you think that is though? Like for me, it's like trying to analyze how society's thinking. How can we be more impactful, leading them down a better road and educating them or empowering them to these principles? How can we do better?
For me, you got to really start and hammer in the concept that you have an intelligence controlling this body. It made the body and controls the body. If otherwise, and I really tease out to say the body doesn't heal itself. The body without intelligence is a corpse. Right. Intelligence heals itself through the body it created, and it does it through recreation. And the word recreation really means celebrate, play. It's literally having fun, affirming your life moment by moment in creation to begin with, and recreation till it can no longer do that.
That'd be a great name for a practice, Matt.
Well, because, hey, listen, I like to play with that. I once went through all the 33 principles, the listed ones, right? I always got to qualify that. But I went through every single principle, and I can shoot this to you guys after if you want. And I reformulated every principle in the language of creation, creator, and the creation is a verb and a noun. So the irony with the creation, right, is that you're a creation, you're a fact, but the creation means nothing without the creator. And as soon as the creation attempts to create on their own, they can only destroy. I mean, it's biblical, right? Anything done without the creator is destruction. So that, I mean, that's why I originally came up with that, that name, Creation Chiropractic, because it's a great homage to jump right into this dynamic again, that equation of creator, creation, and creation, right? Through that creation. So that's intelligence, force, and matter. But it's that equation where you can be rock solid and certain about that, but then you can plug in all the variability of a little kid, an old man, a person with one leg, and all that stuff. Those are the variables in that equation of how that intelligence is adapting to that environment through that unique body at that time and place, how it's dealing with interference, because that gets walked out different, right? In an ASRP, it could be a migraine, a left leg pain, or someone who feels great. So that's just as individual. And the restoration pathway is totally different. Just try to walk out each person's retracing experience, right? Good luck.
Right.
That's where you just go, well, I don't know. How long is it going to take? I have no idea. And neither does anybody else. And neither can anybody else.
Right.
And
I think patients, who I know, because we do it in our office, they appreciate that truth. I don't know how many times I don't know to a patient and they're like, wow, I appreciate that. You're being honest. I'm like, who really knows? I mean, I'm a doctor because I passed a lot of tests and I studied a lot. But once we start, releasing this pressure, it's between you and your body.
Yep.
And that intelligence. We just sit back and watch the show, and it's fun to watch. It's amazing because people heal.
I always thank everybody throughout the day for bringing in the doctor.
Yeah, that's a good one. I always think of Fred Barge. Are you the doctor? No, they're the doctor.
Yeah, but you got to do it in an accent. Are you with the doctor?
Nobody can do better than Drew.
Yeah. Pleasured in chiropractors.
I love Sid's whole thing. I mean, he says it so concisely. The best thing you could say to somebody after you adjust them is "you're better."
Yep.
Yeah. Because it's very accurate, acceptably simple. Yep.
Take me down the symptom route for a minute, because I get these interns come in and they, the whole chiropractors don't treat symptoms. So how do you explain to these students that, we know you're just better off without a subluxation, but explaining that to a patient and then out of the side of your mouth saying, but we don't treat symptoms. We're not here for your symptoms. That whole concept, go there with me, Matt.
I like to say things like, if I adjusted you and you're functioning better and somebody stepped on your foot, how should that feel through open nerve channels? It's supposed to hurt. So is the goal pain relief? And if you drop something heavy on somebody's foot and they didn't feel it, that's actually an abnormal condition called numbness. The nerves aren't working. So what do you want? You want a pleasant life, or do you want a right life?
Pleasant life or a what life?
Right life.
Right life. Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, so just the analogy of what does that symptom actually mean? Reggie's whole thing about eating lo mein or ptomaine.
Yeah.
Right. If you ate ptomaine, that's coming up later that night. So does a sick person get out a poison or hold it in? Right. In society, it'd say the person getting rid of the poison is sick.
Right.
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 We like to say things like expressing health, which isn't quite accurate, the sentiments there. Because the society only says somebody's sick when you have a symptom. Yeah. So if I'm in Minnesota and I start walking to the Grand Canyon, do I have a problem? And as soon as I take that last step or my first step into, let's say, Nebraska, when does the problem start? And what do we do about it? And why do we wait?
Well, we're trained to wait for symptoms, to think something's wrong.
Well, again, it's like waiting for lights to show up on your car. And that's just abuse of your car. It's a good way to run your car down. And people get that with their car.
Right.
And what do we get? The average person gets like 12 or 15 cars in a lifetime. And we get one of these, one of these. You know, there's an old chiropractor I used to intern with a long time ago, and Vicky got to meet him at the funeral of another old chiropractor who died. And Vicky got to meet this old guy, and it was the old days where they used to wear the bowling shirts. Remember the bowling
Yeah.
shirts? The
Yeah.
zip up things. And there's a good, decade and a half where everybody wore those bowling shirts. And so he walks up to Vicky, and this guy, I worked for this guy when I first got out of school, and he was just out there, right? So he walks up to Vicky and he grabs her by both hands and he says, "Hi, I'm Steven." He goes, "I'm 7 years old." And she goes, "What?" He goes, "Well, every cell in the body is only 7 years old." He goes, "I'm 7 years old." Like, meet Steve, the guy, first guy I ever worked for. So if you don't like how I do things now, you can blame it on Steve. But it's true. It's like, "Hi, I'm Steve. I'm 7 years old."
That's funny.
You know, it's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Well, he's speaking vibrancy into his cells, that's for sure.
What is it? What's the joke too with you know, if you've been married for like 30, how many years you been married, Steve?
24.
Don't wait too long. Don't you say at some point, let's say if you're, you know, every 7 years, you've actually been married to how many different women in that time frame? You know, the old chiropractors used to joke about that. You know?
Say that again. What?
Well, if the body changes over every 7 years, right? Let's call it 10
okay.
years. You're married 30 years. That's
Yeah.
3 women that you've been with.
All right.
That's 3 different women you've been with.
Lord have mercy. I got you 2 questions, Matt. I got 2 questions for you. So what is your biggest concern for the future of chiropractic?
Because it's just getting watered down and renamed.
Yeah.
People keep sliding the bar, they keep sliding it more and more and more, and then that becomes the normal, that becomes the actual thing. And all this languaging just keeps pulling it more and more in that direction. And everybody ultimately just wants to say, it is whatever I say it is. Or that's your definition. This is my definition.
Right.
Now you can have a different way to walk out that specific. There's different ways to say the same things and be accurate and congruent, right? But that whole, like, you can feel the line getting pulled, that can't you? Right? And that's why I draw a hard line on certain words. We don't treat it all. You know, we're working with innate intelligence. You can't just say the body, because the intelligence has to precede that. And you're always, you know, you're removing interference to an intelligence, not a body. I like to tell people the difference between an adjustment versus manipulation is you can manipulate a dead person, but you can't adjust a dead person. And they get that, right?
So what's the difference between the 2 words to help explain that to someone who doesn't know? To adjust versus manipulate. What's the difference?
Well, another way I like to say manipulation is just moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. But manipulation is just moving matter around. You can do that with a living or dead bone. You can move that bone wherever you want. You can do all kinds of stuff with that bones. You know, they love to take the x-rays and straighten the bones on spines and do all kinds of stuff. Show me if the interference is removed. Now you got my attention. And I don't doubt in some of those situations where the interference has been removed. I'm not doubting that. But show me that. That's where the lines, that's where the measurement's got to be, not a line on an x-ray.
Yeah.
It's got to be, show me the dynamic of how that nervous system is relating to the tissue it's controlling. That's where our line needs to be. Because as soon as we start straightening bones, it's just physical, that's just specific physical therapy.
So for the student out there, the play on the word, the adjustment is the removal of nerve interference, not just pushing a bone.
Yeah, so your job is just to restore that relationship again with that intelligence that made the bone and runs that bone.
Right.
And again, the pre and post check needs to be related directly to that, not just how a bone is moving or the position of a bone.
Right. Right.
Not making that bone sit in a certain place or do a certain thing, but to turn it back over to the body that wants to do whatever it needs to do with it. You know,
and we would argue in school as well. Are we actually adjusting the bone? Like, are we the ones moving the bone, Or are we entering a
So,
force and the intelligence with them then now is taking over, right?
and
Yep.
the intelligence uses that force to make the adjustment, right, Matt?
Yeah, and Drew, you mentioned this when Johnny was on, and you were absolutely right. We technically don't adjust anything. We introduced what BJ called the adjustic force, but the
Yeah.
adjusting is always done by the body. Think about when you work out, right? When we work out, we don't make our muscles big. We beat our body down. The conditioning comes from the body's response to the demand and supply. This
Right.
demand is the putting pressure on the muscle. The supply is the growth of that muscle to try to adapt better to that additional load. Right?
Right.
So it's the same thing with chiropractic.
Yeah, and the word that I love that you just used was adaptation. If we're adapting, we're going to be healthier than if we're not adapting. And I think that's one thing that chiropractic allows is proper adaptation.
Yeah. The ability to
Yeah,
adapt, adaptability.
yeah, yeah,
And
You
that
can
ability to
adapt.
adapt enables it to restore.
yeah.
Yeah. My favorite definition of death is resuming ambient temperature. When you become your environment, you are no longer you. And it takes work not to be your environment. And that's true for a lot of ways, right? I mean, what makes the chiropractor different from anybody else? One of my favorite things to ask chiropractors who are doing other things is, do other professions do that? If other professions do that, that's not chiropractic.
Right.
What makes that different from any other profession? Because
Right.
all the stuff they do, you can slot it into something else that already exists. Physical therapy, orthopedics, something. Professions that were already there. And none of them recognize that relationship, the intelligence and matter, much less being able to find interference to it. I say give everything else away but that.
Yep.
You can have everything else.
I agree.
That's right. Yeah, me too. All right, I got question number 2. We just talked about your biggest concern, but what is your biggest hope in the future of chiropractic? What gives you hope that you see today?
It's a little kind of sarcastic, but thank God these principles are immutable. You can't fuck them up.
Yep.
So it's, what do they say about the earth? If we screw up this earth, it'll get rid of us and it'll start over again, right? So if we screw up this profession, these principles are sitting in the ether, immutable, for somebody else to pick them up in another generation and run with them. So really, if I'm being super hopeful, it's because that is always there, and no human being, no educated, could ever screw that up. It's always available.
That's awesome.
So that's my hope, starts from there. I could have more hopes on top of that, but it starts with the ideas that are principles were discovered. They weren't invented. They're immutable. They were there before 1895. He picked them up and ran with them.
Yep.
And they can be dropped down, right? People are dropping them left and right, but they can be picked up again by somebody who understands these same principles that were here before Didi.
Dude, I love to see you getting fired up, like you getting close to the camera. I love it. I love, this is like we were talking about earlier, how we would just get fired up talking about philosophy. This is it.
Yeah, and you know what's so great is, even if you disagree with each other, it's
Yeah.
the passion. The passion is the fuel that works that all out. Because what's really interesting is that if you get two people, let's say they're talking about the philosophy or whatever, and they're getting really passionate about it, and they're not quite on the same page. It's not like one person wins and they're passionate, and the other one's no longer passionate. Right? They're both passionate, and they'll work that stuff out if they really care about figuring it out, and loving people and loving the profession and loving the philosophy.
So for
Yeah,
two people to argue, especially within our profession and our philosophy and what it embodies, means they have two different perspectives. And what I'm always curious about is at some point, when you learn what we learn and what this profession is based, what we do, we adjust, we detect subluxation and correct it, period. But the perspective now of adding into it, where do you think that comes from? That someone who's going to argue with me and argue with everything we're talking right now, because people will, that are doing other things. What is giving them that perspective that they need to do more instead of adjust?
Me personally, anybody I saw who supposedly was straight or on it and doing the deal and started adding things to it, didn't have it to begin with. I've never seen anybody who truly understood the principle and try to add anything to it. Because really, when you understand what the principle is, how could you add anything to it? So if the principle is recognizing an intelligence, identifying a specific interference to that through the subluxation, and delivering a specific adjustic thrust that leads to the restoration, okay, of that same intelligence to express again, okay? How could you add anything to that or take anything away if you truly understand that relationship? But if you look at the adjustment as a way to treat a symptom, and you're the doctor and you're moving the bone, and then the body's gonna, if you're pushing on it, you see guys see this out there. Hey, this guy's got sciatica, so take a look at L4, or he's got bladder issues, take a look at whatever. And you're like, well, that's not chiropractic. It's not chiropractic. But why wouldn't you add to that perspective? Because, and I always like to say this, to the degree that you're off on the philosophy, just a half a degree, right? What do they call it? A minute of a degree. You can't even see the difference. And you walk that sucker out, 100 miles, you won't see those 2 points from each other. Yeah. So the whole idea is like, oh, you're splitting hairs. Well, that's the difference between truly being on it or not. Because as soon, to the degree people think they get it, and they start adding things, I'm like, well, you just proved me you didn't understand what we had, what you thought it was to begin with.
And I think what I'm dealing with in my personal life, where I get really frustrated with that, because I like to split hairs, right? Like let's split the hairs, and I want to know why people think and why they do what they do. And my frustration comes in when they start watering down chiropractic, what it does to the profession as a whole and our future as a whole. And I'm dealing with that in my own consciousness, where people say, well, who the hell are you to say this? And who makes you the voice? And well, I know I'm not the voice, because we got a lot of us that are voices, but it frustrates me so much that I believe that it's society, the kids, the people are going to lose out because the profession gets swallowed up by other professions, because we're already doing other things that other professions do. So what makes us unique and different? You know what I'm saying by that?
Sure. And why would that not upset other professions? If we would have stayed in a lane that those guys are trying to actually figure out now, right?
Right.
Didn't BJ said that at some point the medic's going to be practicing chiropractic and the chiropractors being practiced in medicine. Somebody's going to pick up that immutable principle,
right.
But also too, I've kind of resigned, not in a bad way, but just again, perspective wise, trying to adapt the chiropractic philosophy to my whole life, including that is, I'm not going to try to control those doctors. I'm not going to try to control those people. It's kind of like COVID. I forget the psychologist who coined the term mass formation psychosis. He said, your only shot during all this madness is to keep speaking the truth. You can't make them get it. There's a third of the population that's hypnotized. So you can't change that. What you can do is just keep speaking the truth. And the people that can get it, who can wake up, such a great name, Wake Up Humans, you can't wake up, or that can wake up, you just keep speaking the truth. You just keep doing it. The worst thing we could do is shut up. The worst thing you do is let these comments go by.
Right.
Just because you want to have a nice drink with somebody in the room and not make waves.
Right.
It just validates.
And I think that's been the maturity level, at least with, the crew that I've hung out with through the years, is where we used to come out very judgmental and angry and fired up, where we're not as angry and fired up anymore, but loving with sharing the truth, that let's share the space, but I'm not going to change my language and my story. And maybe it'll get into their consciousness, and we'll have a logical conversation that makes what they're doing illogical, to realize what this means for the profession as a whole, which then impacts the people. And I've seen a lot of these, these people that were doing all these other things, and they proverbially throw them down the stairs, and they get, principled, pure, whatever you want to call it. They become a damn chiropractor. Their practice blows up. They see more people. They're happier, and they feel free. Like, that's exciting to realize that that's purely what our profession is designed to do. We just got to get out there with our voice, like you said, and just keep speaking, speaking, speaking. And we're not judging. Like, it's not my job to tell them what to do in practice, but I also recognize that a lot of what they're doing is because of their own internal weakness, but it's affecting the people.
Yeah, and and if we speak in the truth and they feel convicted because of that and they feel guilt or judged or whatever, that's their issue.
Right.
But we're just speaking the truth, and if they should feel convicted. And if they feel convicted, well, maybe that's where change happens.
Right.
A
That's
lot
what
of
we
times
need is change.
Yeah, when anybody recently, if somebody has an issue, I'll just go, well, just make what you're doing make sense to me. I've told you what chiropractic is, the logic of it. Now you tell me what makes sense, what you're doing, and make it sense as a chiropractor. Why should an electrician be doing plumbing work? You're an electrician. So I like to put it on them and go, okay, great. Now, have you thought out your philosophy? Because everybody's got a philosophy. That's an old Ayn Rand quote that just says, you either have a philosophy or it's been given to you, right? It's either yours or somebody else gave it to you. Everybody's got a philosophy. They may not have it honed out, but they're practicing it by just walking around. They may not have articulated it in their head or anything, but they have a philosophy. So, okay, if you're doing all this stuff and you say that's chiropractic, make all that stuff make sense together. I'll shut up long enough for you to make that make sense.
Yeah.
And of course, there's no conversation for that, but
Yeah.
But at least that's where the bar is. Because I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you my rationale. Let me hear your rationale. And you don't get to change the profession. You don't get to change the philosophy. You don't get to change the words. That was all laid down, many years ago. These arguments have been happening since 1896.
Whose definition of subluxation do you like? Or is there someone out there that you think of that's got a good definition of subluxation?
I think when I go back and look at, and God bless Dee Dee and BJ and whatever, but it's like Reggie. I mean, I think their definitions were a little too static. They were a little too built into the matter. They were a little bit too built into structure. So I like the more philosophical definitions of chiropractic as three things. It's the recognition of an innate intelligence. It's the identification of a specific interference to that through what we call the subluxation. And it's the specific adjusting force that we deliver that allows for the restoration of that intelligence again. It's those three things. It's those three things. So if we get into the bone and the juxtaposition and, less than a luxation, I don't resonate with that.
Right.
I like the idea of subluxation as less light, because lux means light and sub means less and ation means state of. I like that, right? Versus a misalignment that's smaller than a luxation. I don't gravitate to that. And chiropractic, as you guys know, means hand practice. That means nothing. Masturbation is a hand practice. That means nothing. So chiropractic, even the word doesn't make sense. But if you tease that apart, chi means energy, right? And rho means flow. And practice means the practice of energy flow. So I gravitate to that. You know what I mean? So if you tease it apart even more, it becomes a more dynamic yet congruent definition. But I don't just like hand practice for something less than a luxation. That doesn't make sense to me. So I have a harder time with some of those definitions, even though I give them all the grace in the world. God bless our pioneers. I don't think any of us could actually started this thing. It's so easy to stand on the shoulders of giants and point, and fart on their heads. You know what I mean? But it's really just about going, okay, so Reggie going, okay, we're here now. So, and it's not about changing it. It's about refining it. And then I always say, anybody's willing to or wants to refine something, you have to be willing to draw out the rationale for that. You know, one of the things you have to do in math is that if you're going to prove 2 + 2 = 4, right? You guys remember this in school, and you have to do these long proofs, and you're like, shit, well, just 2 + 2 = 4. No, you got to prove that. What is there, like 10 or 11 steps to that? You got to prove that, right? So if you're going to refine something, even from the specific words they used here, you have to make sure that that's a congruent with the original philosophy. Okay. Again, there's different ways to say the same thing. I love how Reggie used to say there's different ways to do to talk to people. He said you could look at a beautiful woman and say, hey, every time I look at you, I feel like time stands still. Or you could say, do you got the kind of face that could stop a clock? It's the same information, it just feels different, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, those earrings would look nice on my dresser.
Oh, God. You're an upper cervical guy, makes sense.
Yeah. Got to clear the pathway.
Jeez. Vitality, life,
I got another
expression.
question. I got another question for you, Matt, because I catch myself doing this all the time when I refer to the terminology principled chiropractor. And it frustrates me because I feel like, why do we have to use the word principled? So help me out with that one.
Well, chiropractic, I mean, to me, it's almost too simple. A principled chiropractor practices chiropractic principles.
Right.
Right. And there are no therapeutic chiropractic principles. If somebody thinks there are, I'll give you time. I'll wait. Go find them. I'll wait. I'll be right here when you get back.
Right.
Right. So it's almost too simple, but it just points to, says chiropractic, as a reminder, has principles. And if you are not practicing those principles, you're not a chiropractor.
Right.
It's just the way it is. But I think, to your point, the fact that you even have to say principled chiropractor speaks to just the state of affairs out there.
Right.
But it's got to be said. It's kind of like saying organic chicken, right? Organic beef, right? Organic, free range, grass-fed, whatever. So we've had to come up with 15 million monikers for beef in its original state. And yet the industry, society, gets to call the crap beef.
Right.
But we've got to put 15 million descriptions just to go, oh no, this is actually beef. This is what it was like before we jacked everything up 150 years ago. Right? But we got to put all these qualifiers on it. So now we've got at least one qualifier where we go, no, principled chiropractic. Because evidently chiropractic's whatever every state thinks it is. But I like to say, if people have no problem saying, well, that's not what the state of Maine says it is. That's what the state of Minnesota says it is. But I said, if your state defined your mother as your father, you'd have a problem with that. So you can't say a lamp is a table, and you can't say chiropractic is therapy just because it's in the language of that state.
Yeah.
That's literally saying a lamp is a table. Or your mother, I know you love your mother, but we're going to now call you your father.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have a problem with that because the state just changed that language.
Whew.
That's awesome.
That's great. Old Dr. High Pockets at it again. We love Dr. High Pockets. You're what, like 6'8", 6'7"?
I have to tell you, True, you, ever since I met you, Steve, you backed me up on this. He's always felt like one of the old guys. He's always felt like one of the old chiropractors who walked around and just worked the room.
Yeah.
And you got such great energy. You just remind me one of the old chiropractors from like the 60s or 50s, tromping around doing their deal. You're going to make a really great old chiropractor someday. Here comes
I'm an
Drew.
old chiropractor now. What you talking about?
No, but I mean that in the best way possible. You have this beautiful energy. It just reminds me of the old giants who you just walk around, work the room. How you doing? Good to see you,
And I think a lot of that is just like hanging out, like hanging out with Dr. Sid, hanging out with John Boutwell, hanging out with Dr. Umber, and then you start that whole saying about you start to become the 5 people you hang around with. And, and just start picking up on stuff. It's just, that's just normal, you know, just normal. It matters who we hang out with,
And it
you
ain't a
know.
show, Drew. You mean it. It comes from your heart and it's part of
Yep.
your spirit. And that's what makes it so beautiful. I mean, not many people can walk around a room in a seersuckle suit or whatever, seersucker, that thing you wear, man. And
I
That's
remember
awesome.
that.
one day
Yeah.
I'm going to show up. I mean, I'll look like a giant freaking hang glider walking around in one of those.
Look like Dale Matlock coming in.
Oh, beautiful, man. You're just a beautiful soul. That's why I love you. Both you guys. I love both of you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
You
Drew, you
know,
have
Yeah.
such
I
a
love y'all too.
dismantling personality. I've seen tense conversation. And here comes Drew, and all the stress comes right out of the conversation.
yeah.
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 Sometimes I bring the stress, depends on if they're jackasses or not, you know.
If you're bringing
Like,
stress,
no,
it needs to be.
yeah. If I'm bringing some heat, you done messed up.
There's nothing like Drew dropping like his one-liners from the stage and seeing people pucker up in the crowd because it's like he just has a way of saying something real soft and sweet, but it's calling people out, man. And I've seen people last DE, someone walked up to you and you remember the situation, Drew. You said something up there and he came up, he goes, what did he say? I guess you don't like me, or I guess you have a
Yeah, I guess you were talking about me. And I'm like,
yeah,
bro, like we know how you are.
fact. Yeah, he
We know
was.
how you are. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like you're a rank ass mixer.
Yeah.
Whatever. You're hurting
You love
us.
him anyway. You could exist in the same room
Yep.
and it's just you gave a governing principle and it hit them. And that's the problem with mixers, man. It's like you're not talking to them, you're talking about it, and they get offended. I'm like, if you're
Yep.
gonna get offended, then stop. Because now you know
Yep.
you live
Because
a
they
lie.
know it's wrong.
If it's
Yep.
incongruent here in your heart, then stop. Who wants to live life that way? And Drew, you're
But you know
beautiful.
what's amazing? You know what's amazing in that situation? He didn't walk away saying he's talking about me. He walked up to you, made a point to say you're talking about me. Now, why is that?
Mm,
He didn't walk away going grumbling, he's talking about me.
yeah.
He needed to tell you and recognize to say you're talking about me, almost as if it's the very first stage of him opening up.
He needed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope he's opening up. He needs to.
He'll be
Momentum in the office. I like to bring up this idea of momentum where if you've got a train barreling down the wrong direction at a track, the first step of improvement is that train barreling down the wrong track a little slower. you know, just a little slower, 3 miles an hour slower, still barreling in the wrong direction, but a little slower, improvement. That guy walked up to you, right? To me, that's a win because he could have easily. That's better than him just mumbling away, walking away.
That's pretty brave of him, and honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, flip the switch. Let's say we're listening to some therapist up on the stage doing his whole thing and all boastful about treating all the treatments and stuff. Can you imagine a straight guy walking up and he says something snide about innate intelligence and we walked him and said, "You must be talking about me."
Right.
The
Right.
opposite.
Yeah. Wear that with a badge of honor, brother.
Yes.
Yep.
Amen. Well, listen, I love this profession. I love everything about it, and the future is bright. We got great people really putting our heads together, working hard to just what can we do better? What can we do better? And I really feel, Drew and I have been talking about this for over a year, which is why we do creating these conversations to get amazing people like you, Matt, just to have a voice more for people to hear and talk, which is why, I'll tell you a funny story. So Michelle, who runs a lot of all our marketing, everything, she puts everything out there. I don't even know what's going out there. And one of my very good friends, I was at Kane's baseball game, calls me up and he goes, "Bro, congratulations on the new book." I'm like, "The new book?" Well, she put a thing on a story about the backpack and he thought it was a new book. I'm like, "Buddy, you're one of my good friends. You didn't know it?" Like, because I'm very bad at promoting me, but I want us to get better about promoting chiropractic. And I've got people messaging me about how they're loving these longer forms, they're calling it, right? This is a longer conversation. And I'm going to ask them, share it. You listen to it, put it all over your social media because you never know who's going to hear it, listen to it. And you're not doing it for us. We're not looking to become an influencer or accolades. we're looking to shift people's consciousness and their mindset for the sake of our freaking profession and mankind, because we can transform lives if people understand this principle, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And
That's right.
Drew, you were talking earlier about hope. And what's hopeful right there, Steve, is that you're getting people wanting the long form thing. They're tired with the 3.5 minutes on CNN or the short little, crisp conversation where people get the laugh track on the chair, right? They want the long stuff. They want Joe Rogan style. They want an hour and a half. They want 2.5. They want an hour. People are hungry for connection.
Right.
And we've got the philosophy just waiting for them with the message of connection. So Drew, that's another thing of hope right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing that we talk about that patients and everybody can't hear.
Right.
There's no secrets. Like, patients need to hear the conversations too. Maybe that brings them around more. Who knows?
Yeah.
I had one guy early when I was in practice. God, I was a young chiropractor and I was mixing it up with the school and I was mixing it up with the state. And I really just didn't, in hindsight, I really didn't belong there mixing it up, being in practice for like 4 or 5 years. But I had one guy just steaming at me, and I was in this boardroom and they had the president of Northwestern College was there and the president of Minnesota Chiropractic Association. They're all in this thing, and there's little me sitting there because I'm the one fighting. They were trying to change the definition of chiropractic in the state. And this one guy says, I don't know. All of a sudden he's yelling at me in front of everybody. I'm like 20 some years old. He's like, starts yelling at me and he goes like, I don't know why you have a problem with me treating somebody's shoulder. And I said, I'll make a deal with you. You save their shoulder and I'll save the rest of them. No, like if the guy really just is heart set on, is his passion really on getting, 20% more range of motion in that shoulder? I want that the guy have 360 range of motion in his life.
Amen.
Yeah, that's it.
Amen, brother. Any parting words, Matthew?
No, I just, you know what? I told you when you asked me to do this, anything I would do with either one of you guys is absolute privilege. You guys are just stellar people. And it's really, because really we're kind of normal people, but we adhere ourselves to this amazing philosophy. And we have to be humble enough to just keep following it and representing it, right? Yeah. Wasn't that Sid's thing about authority? You just recognize authority and then you get an authoritative voice. Right. Where does that come from? I mean, if I'm certain, people will go, boy, you sure are certain about X, Y, or Z. I'm like, it's because I attach myself to certain principles. We're talking about gravity. Sid and the keys. We're talking about gravity. How could you not be confident about gravity? It'd be stupid to argue about gravity. Right. That's what we're working with. But as soon as we start sewing, we're monkeying with the body and we're going to treat this condition here and that works some of the time, but let's try this time. I call it the philosophy of this for that. This treatment for that condition. That's really what therapy is. It's the philosophy of this for that. And I like to say the philosophy of chiropractic is this for life. I don't have a care plan. I got a plan to care. That's it. As soon as you start my office, like I think Drew, you said, one of us is going to die. And so I don't do this day one or let's check you in a month. I'm going to be checking in 5 years unless you pull the plug on it. So.
Man, I love that. I don't have a care plan. I have a plan to care. That's it, bro. Like I'm going to make that a meme for the office tonight. I love it. I mean, it got chills, dude. Like chills.
It's open-ended. When does it stop? Yeah. It doesn't stop. It stops when it can no longer adapt in you.
It doesn't.
Matt, one of the toughest things when ending these things is ending it, because we could talk for another 2 hours, which I have no problem doing if you guys want to, but a title. How would you title this conversation?
Drew's Crew.
something restoration.
Yeah.
And whatever you call it's going to be great. I don't know. Yeah.
There's so many principles and things that you brought up through here, Matt, which I knew you would. You are literally one of the most brilliant minds in chiropractic, and you need to write a book. I don't know if you've thought about it, about these principles you've spoken about, giving clarity. You know, you talk about the 33 principles and how you rewrote them or whatever you did. I mean, the profession needs that, man. Like to put your words to paper where it's going to be there forever, which is why I love these things too, because it's there forever. But you know, there's people really need to understand your brilliance in breaking down and simplifying and using analogies to put it all together. I don't really know if I've met anyone in my lifetime in this profession that I admire more than you as far as expanding and creating and putting it together and simplifying it. You're brilliant.
Well, it's really a selfish act because again, I only did it. I'm only doing this because I want things to make sense to me. Things will wake me up at 2:30 in the morning, and I got to write it down, or I'm jotting notes or whatever. I mean, I got three. I mean, I got 3 books written. I just don't put them out because I think 6 people would buy them. I got a children's book called Innate Nate, where Nate goes on this quest to find the intelligence that made him and what that means. And then I got another book with just quotes, you know, all my quotes over the years. I've got about 400 pages of quotes. So I don't know how many thousands of quotes that is. And they're unique quotes. They're just things that I had to put out so that it made sense to me. And then I got another book on the whole relationship of intelligence, interference, and restoration. And it's called The River. And it's all about the river is the intelligence, and the rock in the river is the interference, and then the turbulence is the river adapting to that interference. So, but
right,
that, yeah,
so I got
I'm sitting on stuff, but Judson, I got to give you credit, man. Holy smokes, man. You actually do shit. I talk a lot, but you get it done. If Judson says he's doing it, get out the way. It's going to happen.
Well, it's not easy.
And
Like
I,
I hate roller coasters. My kids love them, and it's like you stand in line, and it's like, oh, and then as I get closer, I start like, oh God, here we go, and you know, I sit in the thing, and I'm like, is it locked in over my chest? And my kids are excited. And I got a picture out in the front there, me screaming on a roller coaster, and I do it for them, right? And the experience. And once I get off of it, I had a good time. And they want to go on 4 more times, they get me once. When you start writing a book and you put it into action, it's that roller coaster taking off. There's no getting off. But at the end, the beauty of it is your great grandchildren are going to hear your voice. They're going to be able to read your words. They're going to be able to feel you. And that's a reason to do it. Like it's your voice matters and it's brilliant and we never want it lost. Like when you meet your creator, your voice and your words will be here to impact people forever, which to me that motivated me to put things into words because my thing was I don't know how to write a book. I can't do it. Then I realized, well, how many people do it? Just freaking do it. And I could put you in touch with my publisher that could help you create it and do it. It's just once you start it, it's boom. But you've got the books there. Like the hard work is done, bro. And people need to hear it. Like you're freaking brilliant, man. And you could change people's lives more so with your words.
Yeah, and Matt, I got you one question. You say that you do this just because you want to understand, right? Like yes or no.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. So now, do you want other people to understand? If you do, you've got to get those books out there.
Yeah. Touche. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but ironically, I mean, it's really just so I can have a better handle this thing. You know, it's like the pearl of great price. Once you find it, you want to take care of it. But and you really want to understand it. You want to put all your energy in that thing. I mean, look at how much time we do. We would never log in. It's like, you know, as a parent, you did never log in to how many hours you spend with your child. Well, shoot, I got to do another 17 hours today with my kid. You know, you just never think that way, right? So, but this is our baby, you know, and so like I said, it's kind of in a selfish way, but it's really just I wanted to understand this because it was worth understanding, is worth, you know, is worth comprehending and figuring out, you know. And I'm not lost on the idea that I'll never figure it out, right? It's all open-ended. We'll all die with just a little better version of what we understood. You know, Reggie Gold said he never wanted to write a book because he never wanted to go back and try to pull out all the errors from the books that he did before that, you know. And then Reggie never wrote a book. And then Strauss did all the books. But Strauss wasn't, you know, I don't think I'm a very good speaker. I like to write. I can hone that in like a piece of clay, but you guys are much better speakers than I am. Reggie Gold was a great speaker. Who knows? He wrote that one book. It's pretty small and concise, you know, the Triumph of Life. But he never wanted to step any further than that, you know, because I asked him, how come you don't write more books? And he said that was why. And Strauss, God bless the man, God rest his soul, but he wasn't the best speaker in the world, but he could write. And somebody asked online, which of the chiropractic books impacted you the most? And I said, pick any blue book, because once that refinement got away from the old traditional thing that was still kind of shackled to this adjustment for this condition, you know, and then when that, you know, chiropractic case, you know what the chiropractic case is? You're alive, you know, and Reggie kind of broke the shackles from that. And that opened it up to checking everybody, you know, womb to tomb, regardless, you know, of how they felt. Because I don't think BJ really had that mentality there. He was all about getting the sick well, but what do you do with the well? Wait till they're sick, you know? And that's what Reggie did. That's how Reggie refined it. And then literally, almost like, you know, the Apostle Paul, Luke took the gospel, took his letters down. He wrote down a lot of what Paul said. It's almost like Strauss wrote down a lot of the stuff that Reggie refined, you know? So
Yeah, I love his Green Book commentaries. I bought those, or they were given to me when I graduated. Love those commentaries. They're great.
He was a great guy, man. I got to spend a lot of time with him. He was such a humble guy, but he was brilliant.
Yeah. I tell you about, if you publish those books for free, I will record the audio portion for you. I'll do the audio book. You publish them, I'll speak them.
I'm going to tell you right now, if I do that, you got the audio credits. I would love to hear my philosophy of how I put it out in your voice. I would love that.
Dude, we're doing it. We're doing it. It's going to be on Audible, $17.99. And you can have all the profits, bro. I don't want any profits from your work.
I'd sell my book for $5 and he'll get his audio sold for $17.99. It's all about the voice. You got that Mayberry voice, breaking it down. But nobody refines this principle without fire. There's no refinement without fire. There's got to be a price to be paid. Something's going to have to give. And since you got an immutable principle and you refine that, everything else gives. Everything else gets burned off the gold nugget. And if you're going to get 24 karat gold, you're going to have a lot of crud come off of that thing. It's going to be a painful process. It's like the spiritual thing, refined by fire, you know?
Yeah.
Separating the flesh from the spirit. It's not, it's a suffering. It's a painful process. And as a chiropractor, we all had to go through that. When I first graduated, I thought chiropractic was straightening the spine. My mom worked for a Pedibond guy, and I don't want to get into it with the Pedibond, but it was all about straightening the spine. And then I had to figure out when I graduated, that's not what it is. What is it then? And I'd heard Sigafus and I'd hear Reggie, and then my only coach I ever had was Sigafus. That guy turned me upside down 14 million ways. I had a quick story. When Sigafus met my wife, okay, in the 90s, probably about 99-ish, she went to, I know what it was. I took her to Parker for whatever reason. And so she heard Sigafus there. And then I introduced him because I'm like, we all thought he walked on water, right? So he looks over at me and he looks over at her and he points to me and he says, he thinks he knows everything, doesn't he? And she goes, he does. So that was me just kind of just getting more and more refined and just, but the best thing Sigafus ever told me was, because I was complaining about something with practice or whatever, and he let me do my spiel, and then he stopped and he says, which of the blessings from your problems are you unwilling to accept?
Wow.
And that was the best. That's the one thing I remember most, is that one time where he literally threw that at me. So
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Brilliant. The great Sigafus.
There's a guy who could get away with murder. Remember all
Oh
those
gosh.
jokes?
Oh,
Oh
man.
Remember
my
all the jokes
gosh.
where you're looking around at everybody and going, how's this going to get received?
Yeah. And he didn't care.
Was it O'Halloran? If I have this story right, O'Halloran tells the story about they were sitting down in like West Palm Beach or something, and they're sitting by the ocean. I might have this wrong, but they're sitting by the ocean and so watching the clouds go by. And Sigafus says, either to Mike or somebody, I thought it was Mike O'Halloran, but he goes, Mike, let's concentrate on that cloud right there going in the other direction. And they did, and sure as shit, that one cloud went in the other direction from the other clouds.
Sigafoos.
That was him.
Yeah.
He gave me my number one practice building process. He said, see them coming in.
Oh my gosh, yes. Talk about seeing versus adjusting.
Yeah.
And you know, I've never done that. I really should do that, but just he'd adjust how many people before he'd even open his doors, you know, on the tables. Was it Schiffman who said that if you had an orientation scheduled, nobody showed up, he did the orientation anyway?
That was Sigafus.
Was that Sigafus?
Yeah. Yep. He said he would talk to the chairs.
Yeah. God, it's just phenomenal.
Incredible.
And
Incredible.
they pretend somehow they were lucky,
Huh?
you know? Then people pretend that they got lucky.
Right.
You know, they opened up in the right part of the country or the right part of the state, you know, and it's just like understanding chiropractic and then not putting garbage on top of it. When they got that idea of abundance from doing orientations in front of nobody and doing adjustments visually, I'm visualizing to people before you even open your doors, the formality was them showing up, right? You've
But when
talked about that.
yeah, I mean, when chiropractors, let alone humans as a whole, realize the intelligence that is working through them, above, down, inside out, and they get quiet to tap into that and allow it to flow freely like the river, their whole life changes. And you attract whatever it is you can be blessed to attract in your life by just tapping into that source that emanates the universe is inside of you. And that intelligence, when you let it speak through you and you listen to it when it's speaking to you, your life gets transformed. It's one of the greatest principles. And that was something that Sigafus always tapped into and I grabbed onto. You know, my father was a Dartmouth, Harvard professional athlete. He said, how do you build your practice? I said, I saw it. He said, well, what kind of advertising? I didn't advertise. Got up at 4 a.m, prayed, meditated, visualized people coming in, and they started coming in. He thought I was out of my mind. And then I realized, yeah, I am out of my mind. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, and society says out of your mind is a demeaning thing.
Yeah. Got to see beyond the 4 fingers. Right? People look at the 4 fingers. You got to look beyond them. And when you start seeing the 8 and beyond that, that's where the magic lives.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Love it.
I've learned a lot from you guys.
Yeah, man.
Man, we are all still learning. That's the thing. Like, we have not figured this shit out. Like, that's why we're doing these. We are still learning.
Yeah.
One
And it's
thing
great,
that you
great to get around the young kids and see them learning and the questions and
Yeah.
you know, especially in the office, see them talking to patients. And it's so funny because, you know, you're buried in this thing for over 20 years. It's you pretty much have heard it all, but you're always refining it.
Mhm.
one thing I told you, Judson, is that there's always this energy with you, like you could drop dead tomorrow. You know,
Thank you.
you know what I mean? Like you have this impending feeling that you have to get it out right now because it may never get out. And then you do it again the next day and the next day and the next day. And a lot of us become complacent, you know?
Mm.
That's why
Yeah.
it's so appropriate, things called wake up humans, because you've been awake the whole time and you're just trying to shake everybody else that's half asleep, you know?
Amen. Amen. Wake up humans to their passion and purpose in life. And when that happens, it's amazing to watch the show.
I love that quote. There's a quote from an old cheesy movie I used to love called Joe versus the Volcano. You ever heard of Joe versus
Yeah.
Volcano? You got
Yeah.
Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in it. Steven Spielberg executive produced the thing, but it was this hokey movie, but I love the movie. I love the message in the movie. And there's a quote in there that says, almost the whole world is asleep, and those few people that are awake live in a state of total constant amazement.
I love that.
You know, like almost the most awake people you don't even hear from because they're in awe.
Mm,
I love the idea of that. It's like, you know,
that's awesome.
Love it.
Or people just need to go sit under a tree and be quiet.
Yeah.
oh, you know what I love? I've been really meditating lately on this idea of still small voice. And I think what gets a lot of attention, or what I used to do, is the idea of how small it was, because he looked for it in the mountain and he looked for it in the earthquake, and right. And then there's this still small voice, this little whispering voice. But what was lost on me is the emphasis on still, ever present. It's right there. It's always present. So we got to go to church, or we got to go to a place or whatever to try to get to that thing that was where we left from. But it's always there still, ever present. You know, it's like the immutable principle. It's like gravity, right? Sid drops the keys. Where's gravity? Is it in his hand? Is it in the keys? Is it in the keys falling down? Is it in when they hit the ground? Gravity is everywhere. All it does is show gravity. But if you didn't have hands or keys or the floor that they could drop on, you still got gravity. But where is it? It's present. It's ever present, right?
Right.
So,
And that voice is so subtle and small, but it's the most powerful force in the universe.
Yeah, and that's what DE is. DE, the dynamic essential, is becoming aware, humble, and obedient to the voice of God, or to that small, still voice. And when we do that, we're going to become dynamic, and that is essential to every success we'll ever have.
That's right.
That's it. That's DE.
That's right.
yeah, I've never seen a group more connected with the philosophy and congruent with the human spirit and life and everything required to be a chiropractor, a successful chiropractor. I don't know if it was Dean who said something about how I don't think there's another profession that requires you to have your head on straight before you ever open your shack or do whatever you're going to do as a business. Because we have to have our head on straight, right? The adjustment between the ears before you adjust a spine.
Right.
And we talk about adjusting between their ears, but we got to emphasize on clearing the interference between our own ears, right? Otherwise, we'll just be a clanging cymbal.
I love when you say that, a clanging cymbal.
Yeah. And that's the way
Yeah.
we started, clanging cymbal at the very beginning. Full circle.
I love how too, all truth is congruent. So I'm doing a lot more stuff with the Bible. You guys may not know this. I think, Steve, you know this, but I say rosaries every day now. I say the entire set of all 20 mysteries of the rosary every day. There's 4 sets. So I'm praying almost 2 hours a day. And when I meditate on those mysteries, I constantly think about chiropractic. I constantly think of the empty vessel. DE principles keep popping up in my head because all the truth is congruent. DE, chiropractic, spirituality, restoration, salvation. It's all like, go ahead and separate it. I'll give you time. Take your time, right? It's ridiculous. It's amazing how you can't separate it, you know? So here I am praying these rosaries. I do the first one on my knees in the morning. And half the time I'm inspired by the next chiropractic or thing that Sid said, or D principle, lasting purpose, dynamic essential, that you just can't separate it,
Yeah.
And what's cool about those mysteries is that you say all these Hail Marys, okay? And then you get to a mystery. And I figured out, I forgot what it was. You're saying, like, if you do the number I'm doing, like the full set every day, that's like 70 some thousand Hail Marys a year. Okay. But what's wild, you think I would, I'd love to analyze stuff. You think I would just fall dead over boredom, but I don't. It's just the opposite. You know what happens is when I hit these mysteries, it's almost like an infinity pool where you walk up to it and it's never the same mystery twice. I keep either I'm different or I'm in a different place with it. It's like these principles. You keep walking up to them differently. The dynamic essential. How come you guys haven't checked that box and moved on? Because you're still breaking it down. You're still refining it for yourself, right? Because they're like these mysteries that a true mystery can't be understood by definition. The only thing you can do is step into its energy and receive. That's the only thing you can do, because as a creation, all you can do is receive, because that expression is a one-way street, right? We can ask, but a lot of my asks now in prayers, I literally ask through your mercy and grace to tell me what to pray about. Who am I to say what to ask for? Thank God you didn't give me all the things I asked for in the past. What's that Garth Brooks song? Thank God for unanswered prayers.
Yep.
If I would have gotten everything that I'd asked for, I would have half as much abundance in my life.
Facts.
Yeah, and I just want to give thanks for living a life that I just don't deserve. I don't deserve the life I'm living. I don't need anything else. And there's an old gospel song too, that Garth Brooks song made me think of it. The premise is that God answers all the prayers, but sometimes the answer is no. And that's all right.
Well, I've heard it said the answer is either no or not yet.
Yep.
What I love is okay, so you got lasting purpose, you got being aware, humble, and obedient, right? So if I'm thinking chiropractically, not just my mindset, I'm aware of an innate intelligence. I'm humble enough to know that I'm made out of limited matter and I can subluxate and have interference to that intelligence. And then I'm obedient to allow that intelligence to flow through me again through restoration. So these are the mental kind of exercises I do, because I love to spin things around, and it's all new and fresh, and yet it's the same ideas. And you can't be obedient unless you're humble. You can't serve unless you're humble. That's why you're such a great server, Drew.
Yeah.
I think you probably let more shit roll off your back than anybody I know.
Probably. I don't give a rip what anybody thinks about me. You know what I mean?
That's an admirable quality. That's great.
And I was even going out on a limb. I'm going to call him Dr. High Pockets. He's so tall. Hell, he may get mad at me, but I don't care.
You know what you said to me when I lost all my weight? You remember what you said to me when I lost all my weight? I hadn't seen Drew in a bit. Walk up to me. He gives me the once over and he goes, "Where's your other leg?" Do you remember saying that, Drew?
No, I don't remember, bro. That would be.
That's so great. It's such an innate response. How many times do you not remember stuff, but that's just what innate popped out and
Yeah, just what it is, just what
literally
it is.
came out as if you've been practicing it.
Hey, Matt, how many bedrooms you got at that house?
4. Why?
It's just
Riley.
Yeah, I want to get a group of us to come out there and hang out and just sit around and talk and have a fire and chill out with you.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
I want to sit by that fire.
Yeah, I don't we don't have to do it now, but at some point I got to catch the story of the Boondocks coffee. I got to learn how that happened. And
yeah, I'm going to send you a bag too.
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee, but I would drink coffee for Drew.
Dude, do you know how much more likable you would be if you had coffee?
And Boondocks coffee from Drew Henderson. I sent it to a friend of mine in Florida. He listens to the podcast. He started listening to every podcast from the first one and is following them in order. and he would see me and he'd go, Boondocks Coffee. So we had Drew send him stuff, and he loves it. He loves it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Great.
By the
Good
way,
stuff.
I'll listen to Judson. I listen to your podcast in the morning when I'm getting ready. So I do my rosary, then I do my breaths, and then I might read a little bit from the Bible. And I take a cold shower. But before I take that cold shower, I shave, and that's when your thing goes on, right? And I have found myself smiling at the stuff that you've said while I'm trying to shave. As you guys know, as guys, it's hard to shave when you're smiling. And so here's, the stories, everything from the roller coaster stories or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here I'm trying to shave, and
That's good.
it's hard to do this when you're smiling.
You're
So,
laughing.
yeah.
Well, good. I'm happy to be part of your morning, and I'm glad it's not while you're in the shower.
Well, listen, the shower, my whole thing with the cold shower is this is what I do. The colder, the better. And most people run that shower to get it warm. I run it to get it cold so I can get the lukewarm. Now, Drew's thinking I'm nuts right now.
Yeah, I was. I was like, you're a. No.
So I'm letting it run to get the lukewarm water that's warmed up in the pipes in the house out so I can get the icy cold stuff, right? So I'm running it to get it colder, right? And so my mental exercise is I go under that shower, and then I have to stay under that shower till I get my breathing to the same rate and level it was before I turned on the water. And once I can stand underneath that cold water and just own that moment, then I can turn it off. It could happen in a minute and a half, 3 minutes. It could happen in 5 minutes, but I do not turn that off until my breathing is now at the same cadence and control I had when I wasn't even paying attention to it. That's just what I do. So, give it a try. Drew, you got to do the cold shower thing.
Dude, I don't know if, I guess my face was saying it all, because I'm just like, what in the world is this dude like? No, I come out of the shower, I'm red because it's scalding hot. The other morning I showed up, it was like 22 degrees down here. Claudia's like, you're in short sleeves without a jacket. It's like 22 degrees. I'm like, yeah, I was hot when I got dressed. Like, I'm cold now. But
so, funny thing, I was at a fall DE. I forget which one it was. It was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. It was in October, but it was in Atlanta. Okay.
yeah.
So it was, it was kind of getting chilly in Minnesota. So I thought, well, I'm going to just test the shower here. It's probably not going to be that cold, but it was cool. I mean, it was like in the 50s or something like that. And I turned that water on just to kind of see what it was like. And I'm telling you, that was the coldest shower I'd ever taken in my life. I went down to the front desk and I asked them, I said, you guys putting ice cubes in like a big tank up there? I got out of that shower and I was red from the cold. I mean, like scalding, not scalding, but just like completely like red. And I couldn't feel my skin. Coldest shower I ever took was October DE in Atlanta.
You can have it. Give me hot water.
You know what? You haven't done yet. Listen. I love the Eleanor Roosevelt quote that says, you must do the very thing you think you cannot do is the thing you got to do. If somebody has weak muscles, Drew, you don't sit them in the corner and say, listen, I'll move everything for you. No, you got to challenge those muscles. So you get the person with the circulation of their cold. First thing you got to do is get their ass in the cold water.
Yeah, I don't have circulation problems. I'm not getting in the cold shower.
Hey, listen, my first thing with doing the cold shower, when I thought, okay, I'm finally going to do this. Because, listen, you guys know there's any number of things we hear for years and you're like, yeah. And you're like, screw it, right? And you give it the first go with it, right? And so I'm like, okay, I'll do this cold shower thing. I'm up for it this morning. I'll give this a shot. And after the shit, that whole thing, I'm going to tell you, I just trusted the process and I stayed under there. And it took about 45 seconds, maybe a minute. And all of a sudden, I felt this rush in my body. And I'm not kidding you. I thought I'd hit the handle over to hot because that water felt warm. And I started bawling. And I thought, there's something going on here. There's something going on here. And then when I got done, I had so much energy. I was literally laughing to myself. And I thought, okay, we're going to start doing this, see where it goes.
Yeah, because your body goes into fight or flight because it thinks you're going into hypothermia, and it flushes you out trying to keep you warm, one last ditch effort. And then you're like, shit, I'm alive. No wonder you're happy and thrilled, bro. You made it out alive again, another morning. Whew. Let me go pray my rosary. No, I'm not doing it.
He's not doing it.
Not doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That's
Oh,
funny.
man, love you guys.
All right, boys, let's wrap it up, man. After all that, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, to record, this is our
Longest one.
This is our longest one, boys.
Hour and 40 minutes.
Wow.
Jeez.
This is
We got
awesome.
another couple hours if we're going to get into Rogan territory.
That's right. That's right. Hey, we'll know who listens to the whole thing when they start talking about the cold shower conversation. You know?
You know what they say though? They say though that when you first start doing these things, like you get the niceties and you get the formalities, and people's educated can stay with that. But at some point, educated gets tired and innate takes over. And so, I mean, I'm thinking probably the last third of a podcast is the most important thing to listen to, because educated got tired doing long division before that. And then all of a sudden, all you have left is innate.
Bro, it never fails. As long as I've been doing this, when I, talk to people and you're having a conversation in the beginning, someone that's not used to doing it, they're a little uncomfortable and they're, and then all of a sudden they kind of lose their brain. And then things start coming out, and then you just pull it out of them. And at the end of it, they're like, wow, that was awesome. So you explained that spot on. I mean, that's exactly what happens. Is
what I noticed with Dean? Dean was a great example of that. I think he's probably the best example. Dean, when he speaks, and I told him this, when Dean speaks, it reminds me of a plane taking off. It gathered up steam, it's kind of rumbling on the ground, and at some point, all of a sudden, it just lifts off. And it's almost like, these seasoned guys like you guys, you get talking for a bit and you can feel you're finding your way. And then all of a sudden you lift off, and it feels like a plane taking,
Yeah. Amen.
Great stuff, man. Great.
Well, let's wrap it up and let's thank Boondocks Coffee, the longest running sponsor of Wake Up Humans podcast. And go ahead and grab you some bags of that, man. It's good stuff.
I got to send y'all some.
And maybe we'll get Matt. Hey, listen, maybe Drew, you take a cold shower, and Matt, you drink a cup of Boondocks Coffee.
I'll do it. I may
try some of that coffee in the shower.
We'll call it a deal. Matt, you can become a big influencer, start videotaping yourself in a cold shower. Teach people how to do some hard things. You can become a big influencer doing that, brother.
I'll just do it from the waist down and they won't know who I am.
That's right. That's right. See how many likes you get with that. All right, boys. Love and appreciate you. And I really mean that.
Love y'all.
Words. God bless.
Love you guys.
Matt, thank you, bro.
Yep. Thank y'all.
Oh, thank you. It's a blessing to do anything with you people.
Yeah, man, love you a lot, dude.
I agree
so much.
All right.
God bless you.